Tycoon businessman ditches wife for glamorous model. Realizes she's mothering his secret trio, Mr. Chan. Your 2 o'clock is waiting. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Marcus pressed his forehead against the cool glass. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, Sarah. He loosened his Hermes tie slightly, a rare gesture of vulnerability in his otherwise meticulously controlled world. The weight of running a $4 billion tech empire sat heavily on his shoulders, though you'd never know it from his public persona. Another day, another deal, he muttered to himself, picking up a framed photo from his desk. It showed him and Elena at their wedding 15 years ago. Her smile seemed genuine then. He couldn't remember if it had been. The phone buzzed again. Mr. Chan. The board members are getting restless. Coming, he replied, straightening his tie and slipping back into the role everyone expected him to play. As he walked toward the conference room, snippets of conversations floated through the air. Did you see the quarterly projections? Chen's done it again. Stocks up 12%. Success. It was all he'd ever known, all he'd ever chased. But lately, the victory champagne had started tasting more like ash in his mouth. Marcus, a board member called out as he entered. There's our golden boy. He forced a smile, one perfected over years of business dealings. Gentlemen, ladies, shall we begin? Inside, though, a voice whispered, is this all there is? The same voice that had been getting louder lately, drowning out the satisfaction of closed deals and rising stock prices. Little did Marcus know, as he took his seat at the head of that mahogany table, that his carefully constructed world was about to shatter. In less than 24 hours, he would meet someone who would make him question everything he'd built, everything he thought he wanted. But for now, he was still Marcus Chun, CEO of Chun Technologies, husband to Elena, king of his corporate castle. For now, the mask stayed firmly in place. Let's review the Q3 numbers, he announced, his voice steady and authoritative, while somewhere deep inside, a part of him screamed for something more. Welcome back, sir. The housekeeper nodded as he entered. The sound of his Italian leather shoes echoed through the marble foyer. Elena, he called out, his voice bouncing off the empty walls. In the garden. Her voice carried from somewhere beyond the French doors. He found her tending to her prized roses, her gardening gloves incongruous with her designer dress. Elena looked up, her face carefully composed, but her eyes telling a different story. You're home early, she said, not quite meeting his gaze. The Thompson Foundation Gala is tonight. Did you forget? No, Marcus. I never forget our obligations. The way she said obligations made him wince internally. Their bedroom felt like a stage set as they prepared for the evening. Elena slipped into a Valentino gown, while Marcus adjusted his bow tie, both of them moving around each other in a well-rehearsed dance of avoidance. Beautiful as always, he offered, watching her apply her lipstick. Thank you, she replied, her reflection in the mirror a perfect picture of sophistication. But he caught it, that slight tremor in her hand as she set down the lipstick. At the gala, they played their parts flawlessly. Marcus charmed potential investors. Elena gracefully networked with other corporate wives. From the outside, they were the perfect power couple. Marcus, darling. Sandra Thompson air-kissed his cheek. The foundation simply couldn't function without your generous support. The pleasure's ours, he responded automatically, feeling Elena's hand tighten slightly on his arm. Later that night, as they stood on their bedroom balcony overlooking the manicured grounds, Elena finally spoke what had been hanging in the air all evening. Are you happy, Marcus? The question caught him off guard. He looked at his wife of 15 years, really looked at her for the first time in what felt like forever. We have everything we ever wanted, he deflected. Elena's laugh was soft and bitter. That's not what I asked. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Below, their infinity pool reflected the stars, rippling slightly in the night breeze. All this perfection, all this wealth, and yet, I have a breakfast meeting tomorrow, he said finally, retreating into the safety of his schedule. Elena didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes. As she turned away, Marcus caught his reflection in the window, successful, wealthy, envied by many. and completely, utterly empty. Little did he know, tomorrow's breakfast meeting would be the catalyst that would shatter this pristine facade of perfection, introducing a chaos that would either destroy him or finally make him feel alive. "Mr. Chan, we're so honored to have you here," the photographer's assistant chirped, leading him through the controlled chaos. "We're just finishing up with our previous shoot." That's when he saw her. Sofia Martinez stood in front of the camera, her presence magnetic. Long dark hair cascaded down her back, her olive skin seeming to glow under the studio lights. But it wasn't just her beauty that caught Marcus's attention. It was the way she commanded the space, the quiet confidence in her movements. "Perfect, Sofia. That's the shot," the photographer exclaimed. She turned, catching Marcus's gaze. Time seemed to slow, the busy studio fading into background noise. "Mr. Chan," she smiled, extending her hand. "I've heard so much about your work with sustainable technology." Her voice carried a slight Spanish accent, warm and melodious. Marcus felt something stir inside him, something he thought had died years ago. "Please, call me Marcus," he heard himself say, their handshake lasting a moment too long. "Sofia will be the face of our new tech-conscious campaign," his marketing director explained, but Marcus barely heard him. During the shoot, their eyes kept meeting. Between takes, Sofia approached him. "Your company's green initiative," she said, "it's not just corporate PR, is it? You actually care." Marcus found himself opening up, sharing his genuine passion for sustainable innovation, something he hadn't done in years. "Most people don't ask about that part. Most people don't look beyond the surface," she replied, her brown eyes seeming to see right through his carefully constructed facade. Would you like to discuss it further over coffee?" The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Sofia's smile held no pretense, no agenda. "I'd like that." As they exchanged numbers, Marcus felt his phone buzz with a text from Elena. "Don't forget dinner with the Hendersons tonight." Looking at the message, then back at Sofia, Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. He knew, with terrifying certainty, that he was about to step off a cliff. "There's a little cafe around the corner," Sofia suggested. "They make excellent espresso." "Lead the way," Marcus replied, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and guilt as he followed her out of the studio. The morning sun caught her hair as they stepped onto the street, and Marcus realized he hadn't felt this alive in years. What he didn't know was that this moment, this simple decision to follow her to a cafe, would set in motion events that would completely unravel his carefully ordered world. "You seem lost in thought," Sofia observed, stirring her cappuccino. Marcus traced the rim of his espresso cup. "Just remembering, I used to come to cafes like this when I was starting out. Could barely afford the coffee." "Tell me about that, Marcus." She leaned forward, genuinely interested. "The one before the Forbes covers." His eyes grew distant, voice softening. "I was 25, sleeping on a friend's couch in Brooklyn. Had this crazy idea about renewable energy storage. 20 years earlier, you're insane." "Chan," his best friend Tom had shouted. "You're turning down Morgan Stanley for some pipe dream." Young Marcus stood in their cramped apartment, tie loosened, rejection letter in hand. "I can't spend my life making other people rich, Tom. I have to try." "Elena's father offered you a position in his firm," Tom reminded him. "A guaranteed future." "I don't want guaranteed. I want extraordinary." "Present day, I worked 18-hour days," Marcus told Sofia. "Missed my sister's wedding. My father's 60th birthday. Elena, she stuck by me somehow." Sofia's hand brushed his briefly as she reached for the sugar. "And now? Was it worth the sacrifice?" The question hit him like a physical blow. In the soft cafe lighting, Sofia's eyes held no judgment, only curiosity. "I built something remarkable," he said slowly. "Changed the world, even. But somewhere along the way, you lost something," she finished softly. His phone buzzed again. "Elena, caterer needs final numbers for the charity event." Marcus stared at the message, feeling the weight of his empire pressing down on him. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen differently." "It's never too late to make new choices," Sofia said, her words carrying a dangerous promise. The afternoon light painted shadows across their table, and Marcus realized they'd been talking for hours. In this hidden corner of New York, with this woman he barely knew, he felt more himself than he had in decades. "I should go," he said, not moving. "But you don't want to," Sophia observed, a slight smile playing at her lips. The air between them crackled with possibility and danger. Outside, his driver waited with the car that would take him back to his perfect life, his perfect wife, his perfect prison. "Have dinner with me," he said suddenly, surprising himself. "Not today, but soon." Sophia stood, gathering her things. "Life's full of crossroads, Marcus Chun. Make sure you're ready for where this one leads." She left him there, the scent of her perfume lingering, along with the terrifying knowledge that he was about to risk everything he'd built for something he couldn't even name yet. His phone buzzed one more time. "Elena again. Are you coming home?" Marcus stared at the message, his finger hovering over the reply. "I miss you already. Last night was perfect." Elena's world tilted on its axis. She sank onto the edge of their king-sized bed, the same bed they'd shared for 15 years. Her fingers moved automatically through the phone, each swipe revealing more secrets, more lies. "Mrs. Chan," their housekeeper's voice startled her. "Would you like me to serve lunch on the terrace today?" "No," Elena's voice cracked. "I'm not hungry." Alone again, she opened Marcus's calendar. The business meetings were there, perfectly logged, but now she saw them for what they were, carefully crafted deceptions. Tuesday evenings, Friday afternoons, Sunday brunches. Her own reflection caught her eye in the bedroom mirror. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, manicured nails. The costume of a corporate wife. When had she become this person? The phone buzzed again. Another message from S. "The gallery opening tomorrow? I'll wear the dress you bought me." Elena's laugh was hollow, echoing off the marble walls. The gallery opening. She was supposed to attend with Marcus. She'd already chosen her outfit. With mechanical precision, she began taking screenshots, sending them to her private email. Then she called the one person she never thought she'd need. "James Morrison Investigations," a gruff voice answered. "I need your services," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Discretion is paramount." "Of course, Mrs. Chun. We specialize in discretion." As she hung up, another message appeared. "You make me feel alive." As Elena walked to their walk-in closet, running her hands over Marcus's suits. Armani, Tom Ford, Brioni, each one a reminder of the life they'd built together. Her fingers caught on something in his jacket pocket, a small velvet box. Inside, a delicate necklace with a note. "To Sophia, my unexpected miracle." The sound that escaped her throat wasn't quite a laugh, wasn't quite a sob. "Mrs. Chan," the housekeeper again. "Mr. Chen's office called. He'll be working late tonight." "Thank you, Maria," Elena replied, her voice ice-cold. "Please cancel my appointments for the next week." All of them. She walked to her vanity, staring at her reflection. The perfect Mrs. Chun stared back, but something had changed in her eyes. The shock was giving way to something else, a determination. "Game on, Marcus," she whispered to her reflection. "Game on." She picked up her phone, dialing her personal attorney's number. As it rang, she opened her laptop, accessing their joint accounts. Marcus wasn't the only one who knew how to play chess. What he didn't know was that while he was falling into his new romance, he was about to discover that he'd severely underestimated his wife. The pregnancy test on her bathroom counter, all three of them, couldn't be wrong. But this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Her phone buzzed. Marcus's name lit up the screen, sending a jolt through her body. "Hello," she answered, her voice quivering slightly. "Sophia," Marcus's warm tone came through. "I've missed you. How are you feeling?" She took a deep breath. "Marcus, we need to talk. Can you come over?" There was a pause on the other end. "Of course. Is everything all right? Just, please come. It's important." 30 minutes later, a knock at her door. Sophia opened it to find Marcus standing there, concern etched across his face. "Sophia, what's wrong?" he asked, stepping inside and taking her hands in his. She led him to the couch, her heart pounding. Marcus, I don't know how to say this. He squeezed her hands gently. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Sophia looked into his eyes, searching for strength. I'm pregnant. Marcus's eyes widened. A mix of shock and something else, was it joy? Flickering across his face. That's not all, Sophia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I had an ultrasound today. Marcus, it's triplets. The world seemed to stop. Marcus's grip on her hands tightened, his face a canvas of conflicting emotions. Triplets? He repeated, his voice hoarse. Are you sure? Sophia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I saw them, Marcus. 3 little heartbeats. Marcus stood abruptly, walking to the window. His silhouette against the fading light seemed suddenly vulnerable. No longer the powerful CEO she had come to know. This changes everything, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. Marcus, I know we never talked about the future. If you don't want. He turned back to her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. No, Sophia, don't even think that. I need to process this. She stood, walking over to him, her hand instinctively going to her stomach again. I'm scared too, Marcus. But when I saw those heartbeats, I've never felt anything like it. Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. 3 babies, he whispered into her hair. Our babies. As they stood there, clinging to each other in the fading light, neither of them spoke the words hanging heavily in the air. The complications, the scandal, the lives that would be forever changed by this revelation. Sophia didn't know about Elena, about the double life Marcus had been leading. And Marcus, as he held the mother of his unborn children, felt the ground crumbling beneath his carefully constructed world. Little did they know, as they stood in that embrace, that their lives were about to become infinitely more complicated than either of them could imagine. The ripple effects of this moment would soon turn into a tidal wave, threatening to sweep away everything in its path. As he pulled into the driveway of his Hamptons mansion, the enormity of his situation crashed over him like a tidal wave. Elena's car was in the garage. The lights were on in their bedroom. His double life was balanced on a knife's edge, and he knew it was about to come crashing down. He sat in the car for a long moment, his forehead resting on the cool leather of the steering wheel. What have I done? He whispered to the empty vehicle. With leaden feet, he made his way to the front door. As he entered, the silence of the house felt oppressive, accusing. Elena, he called out, his voice echoing through the marble foyer. In here, came her reply from his study. He found her sitting behind his desk, her posture rigid, her eyes cold. On the desk before her lay a manila folder. Welcome home, darling, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Long day at the office? Marcus felt his heart plummet. Elena, I can explain. Can you? She cut him off, sliding the folder across the desk. Can you explain these? With trembling hands, he opened the folder. Inside were photographs of him and Sophia at cafes, entering her apartment building, sharing intimate moments they thought were hidden from the world. How long have you known? He asked, his voice barely audible. Long enough, Elena replied, standing up. But that's not the real question, is it, Marcus? He looked up at her, seeing not just anger in her eyes, but deep, profound hurt. What is the real question? The real question is, what are you going to do now? She walked around the desk, standing directly in front of him. Because your little model isn't just your mistress anymore, is she? She's carrying your child. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. How did you? I have my sources, Elena said coldly. What I want to know is, how are you going to handle this? Our company, our reputation, our life, everything we've built together. Are you ready to throw it all away? The weight of his choices pressed down on Marcus like a physical force. His voice. About the pregnancy. Elena's head snapped up. What about it? It's triplets, Mrs. Chun. And he paused, visibly uncomfortable. There's a possibility they're not just Mr. Chen's children. Elena felt the world tilt on its axis. Explain, she demanded. Morrison pulled out a medical file. 5 years ago, Mr. Chen made a sperm donation to a high-end fertility clinic. Miss Martinez was a client there 3 months ago. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. This wasn't just an affair. This was a cosmic joke of epic proportions. Leave the file, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. That will be all, Mr. Morrison. As the door closed behind him, Elena stared at the scattered documents on her desk. Her carefully plotted revenge suddenly seemed hollow, childish even. She picked up a photo of Sophia, not a glamour shot, but a candid image of her speaking at a climate rally. The passion in her eyes was unmistakable. Elena's phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. We need to talk. About everything. She looked at the message, then back at Sophia's photo. The lines between villain and victim, between right and wrong, were blurring before her eyes. With a deep breath, she picked up her phone and dialed a number she never thought she'd call. Hello. Sophia's voice answered, wary and tired. Ms. Martinez, Elena said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. This is Elena Chen. I think it's time we had a conversation. As she waited for Sophia's response, Elena realized that the story she thought she knew was far more complicated than she could have imagined. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way forward that none of them had considered yet. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Elena began, her voice cool and controlled. Sophia nodded, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. I didn't expect this. Elena's gaze followed the movement. Neither did any of us, I suppose. A heavy silence fell between them, filled with unspoken accusations and questions. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know he was married. You have to believe that. Elena's laugh was sharp, brittle. Believe me, Ms. Martinez. That's the least of our problems right now. Sophia's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself. What do you know about the father of your children? What? Sophia's confusion was evident. Marcus is the father. We've been together for months. Have you? Elena pressed, leaning forward. Or have you been with the idea of him? The successful CEO, the environmental crusader. Sophia's face paled. I don't understand. Elena pulled out a file from her bag, sliding it across the table. 5 years ago, Marcus made a donation to a fertility clinic. The same clinic you visited 3 months ago. Sophia's hands trembled as she opened the file, her eyes widening as she read. This can't be right. We met at a photo shoot. It was chance. Was it? Elena's voice was gentler now, seeing the genuine shock on Sophia's face. Or did someone orchestrate this entire situation? Sophia looked up, tears forming in her eyes. Who would do that? Why? That's what we need to find out, Elena said, her business acumen kicking in. Because whoever is behind this isn't just playing with our lives. They're manipulating a multi-billion-dollar company, global environmental initiatives, and now the lives of 3 unborn children. Sophia's hand went to her mouth, a small gasp escaping. The babies. They're innocent in all this. Elena nodded, surprising herself with the surge of protectiveness she felt. Yes, they are. Which is why we need to work together to uncover the truth. We? Sophia echoed, disbelief coloring her tone. Yes, we, Elena confirmed, her voice firm. You, me, and Marcus. We've all been played, Ms. Martinez. And I, for one, don't take kindly to being a pawn in someone else's game. Sophia sat back, her mind clearly reeling. What do we do now? Elena's eyes glinted with determination. Now, we start digging. Someone wanted these babies to exist, wanted this scandal to unfold. We need to find out who and why. As if on cue, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. They looked at each other, a moment of understanding passing between them, before checking their messages. It was from Marcus. We need to talk. All of us. There's more to this than you know. Elena and Sophia's eyes met across the table, a silent agreement forming. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. Shall we? Elena asked, standing and gathering her things. Sophia nodded, rising to join her. As they left the room, side by side, the unlikely allies stepped into a mystery deeper and more dangerous than either could have imagined. The game was changing, and so were the players. But who was really pulling the strings? He turned as they entered, his eyes widening at the sight of the two women together. Elena, Sophia, I didn't expect. Save it, Marcus. Elena cut him off, her voice sharp. We're here for answers, not apologies. Sophia stepped forward, her hand protectively over her belly. Is it true? About the fertility clinic? Marcus's face paled. He sank into a nearby armchair, suddenly looking every bit his age. Yes, he whispered. But there's more. So much more. Elena and Sophia exchanged glances before taking seats on the sofa across from him. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Start talking, Elena demanded, her CEO persona firmly in place. Marcus took a deep breath. It started about 6 months ago. I received an anonymous email with detailed information about Chun Technologies' upcoming projects. Things no one outside the company should have known. Sophia leaned forward, her brow furrowed. Blackmail? No, Marcus shook his head. A warning. The email claimed that our clean energy initiative was about to be sabotaged. That someone inside the company was working against us. Elena's eyes narrowed. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know who to trust, Marcus admitted, his voice heavy with regret. The email suggested that the board might be compromised. So what did you do? Sophia pressed. Marcus met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and determination. I followed their instructions. They said I needed to create a public scandal, something big enough to distract from what was happening behind the scenes. Elena stood abruptly, her fists clenched. You manufactured this entire situation? Our marriage, her pregnancy, all of it? No, Marcus protested. The affair, that wasn't planned. Sophia, you have to believe me. What we have is real. Sophia's face was a mask of confusion and hurt. But the fertility clinic, Marcus ran a hand through his hair. They knew about my donation years ago. Somehow they orchestrated your visit to that specific clinic. But I swear, I didn't know until it was too late. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Elena paced by the windows, her mind racing. Sophia sat still, one hand on her stomach, the other covering her mouth in shock. Who are they? Elena finally asked, turning back to face her husband. And what do they want? Marcus shook his head. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's big. Bigger than us, bigger than Chun Technologies. Suddenly, all their phones buzzed simultaneously. They looked at each other, a chill running down their spines, before checking the message. An unknown number. Well done, Mr. Chun. You've brought all the players together. Now the real game begins. Check your email for further instructions. Remember, the fate of more than just your company hangs in the balance. As they stood there, 3 people caught in a web of deceit and manipulation. The New York skyline twinkled indifferently behind them. The truth was out, but it had only led to more questions. Who was pulling the strings? What was their endgame? And most importantly, how were they going to fight back? The night was far from over, and as Marcus opened his laptop to check the promised email, they all knew that their lives would never be the same again. My God, Elena whispered, her eyes widening as she scanned the contents. The email was a dossier, filled with confidential information about Chun Technologies' revolutionary clean energy project. Schematics, financial projections, and most alarmingly, a list of key personnel involved, including several names they didn't recognize. These people. Sophia pointed at the unfamiliar names. Who are they? Marcus shook his head, his face ashen. I don't know, but look at their positions: Chief of Operations, Head of R&D. These are roles that don't exist in our company. Elena's analytical mind kicked into high gear. They've infiltrated us, created phantom positions, probably siphoning off funds and information. As they scrolled through the document, a video file caught their attention. With a shared look of apprehension, Marcus clicked play. The screen filled with the image of a dimly lit room. A figure sat in shadow, their voice distorted. Mr. and Mrs. Chun, Ms. Martinez. By now you understand the gravity of your situation. Your clean energy project isn't just revolutionary. It's dangerous to those who profit from the world's addiction to fossil fuels. Sophia gasped, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. The shadowy figure continued. We've been watching you, manipulating events to bring you to this moment. The affair, the pregnancy, all part of a larger plan to discredit Chin Technologies and bury your project forever. Marcus clenched his fists, anger overcoming his initial shock. Who are you? What do you want? As if hearing him, the figure leaned forward, still obscured but closer. What we want is simple. In 48 hours, you will hold a press conference. You will announce that your clean energy project has failed spectacularly, that it was based on fraudulent science. You will resign in disgrace, and Chun Technologies will crumble. Elena stood abruptly, her voice sharp. And if we refuse? The figure chuckled, a chilling sound even through the distortion. Then we release evidence of Marcus's embezzlement, Sophia's past indiscretions, and Elena's own corporate espionage. Your lives, your reputations, your future all destroyed. And let's not forget those precious babies. Growing in blissful ignorance of the storm around them, the video cut to black, leaving them in stunned silence. Sophia broke first, a sob escaping her lips. This can't be happening. Our babies. Marcus moved to comfort her, but hesitated, looking at Elena. To his surprise, his wife's face wasn't filled with anger or betrayal, but with fierce determination. No, Elena said, her voice steady. We're not playing their game. Not anymore. Marcus and Sophia looked at her, hope mingling with fear in their eyes. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Elena's eyes glinted with a dangerous light. They think they've backed us into a corner that will roll over to protect ourselves. But they've made one crucial mistake. What's that? Sophia whispered. They've united us, Elena replied, her voice gaining strength. We're not victims anymore. We're a team, and we're going to fight back. Marcus stood, a newfound resolve in his stance. But how? They seemed to hold all the cards. Elena smiled, a predatory grin that reminded them why she was such a formidable businesswoman. Not all of them. We have resources, connections, and most importantly, we have the truth on our side. She looked at Sophia, then at Marcus. Are you with me? In that moment, as the New York night pulsed beyond the windows, three unlikely allies found themselves bound by a common purpose. The game had changed, but so had the players. Sophia nodded, wiping away her tears. For our babies. For the future they deserve. Marcus took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. For the dream we built, and the world we want to create. Elena's smile widened. Then let's get to work. We have 48 hours to turn the tables. And when we're done, they'll wish they'd never heard of Chun Technologies. As they huddled around the laptop, beginning to formulate their plan, the air crackled with a new energy. The night was long, and the odds were stacked against them. But for the first time since this ordeal began, they felt a glimmer of hope. The real battle was just beginning. It has to be here somewhere, she muttered, pushing aside years of financial reports and board meeting minutes. Suddenly, her hand froze. She pulled out a thin folder, its edges worn and yellowed with age. The label read, Project Phoenix, 2005. Marcus, she called out, her voice tight with excitement and trepidation. He appeared in the doorway moments later, looking as exhausted as she felt. What is it? Did you find something? Elena held up the folder, her hands trembling slightly. Do you remember this? Marcus's eyes widened as he took the folder, his fingers tracing the faded label. Project Phoenix. God, I haven't thought about this in years. It was before we went public, wasn't it? Elena nodded, her mind racing. It was our first attempt at clean energy technology. We abandoned it because it was too ambitious, Marcus finished, a hint of regret in his voice. We didn't have the resources or the technology to make it work back then. Elena's eyes glinted with renewed purpose. But we do now. And more importantly, this project was completely off the books. There's no digital trail, no way for our mysterious blackmailers to know about it. As they pored over the old documents, the pieces started falling into place. The rudimentary designs from nearly 2 decades ago suddenly seemed prophetic, aligning eerily well with their current, threatened project. Sophia entered the room, cradling a mug of herbal tea. "Any progress?" she asked, her voice still thick with sleep. Marcus looked up, a spark of hope in his eyes for the first time in days. "We might have found our ace in the hole." As they explained the significance of Project Phoenix to Sophia, her eyes lit up with understanding. "So we could use this as a backup? A way to preserve the core of your clean energy work even if they force you to denounce the current project?" Elena nodded, a sly smile playing at her lips. "Exactly. But we need to move fast. We have less than 36 hours before their deadline." Marcus reached for his phone. "I'll call James in R&D. If anyone can adapt these old designs quickly, it's him." "Wait," Elena said, placing her hand on his arm. Her expression was grave. "We can't trust anyone in the company right now. Remember the phantom positions in their dossier? We don't know how deep this infiltration goes." The weight of their isolation settled over the room. They were alone in this fight with the fate of not just the company, but potentially the future of clean energy hanging in the balance. Sophia broke the tense silence. "What about my contacts in the environmental groups? They're not connected to Chun Technologies, and many of them are brilliant scientists in their own right." Marcus and Elena exchanged a look. It was risky bringing outsiders into this high-stakes game. But what choice did they have? "Do it," Elena decided. "But be careful. Use secure channels, burner phones if you have to. We can't risk our plans leaking." As Sophia left to make her calls, Marcus turned to Elena, his voice low and intense. "This is crazy, you know that, right? We're going up against forces we don't even understand. Risking everything on a long-shot plan." Elena met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. "I know, but what's the alternative? Give up? Let them win? Destroy everything we've worked for?" She placed her hand on her stomach, a gesture of solidarity with Sophia and the unborn children at the heart of the storm. "We're not just fighting for us anymore, Marcus. We're fighting for the future. All of it." Marcus nodded, squeezing her hand. In that moment, despite the betrayals and lies that had brought them to this point, they were united as they hadn't been in years. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the paper-strewn room, the unlikely trio threw themselves into their desperate plan. The clock was ticking, the stakes impossibly high. But for the first time since this nightmare began, they had hope. And sometimes, hope is the most powerful weapon of all. "Dr. Reyes, how are the simulations coming along?" Sophia called out, her voice a mixture of excitement and anxiety. A disheveled woman looked up from her computer, dark circles under her eyes betraying the long hours she'd been working. "We're close, Sophia. The old Phoenix designs are brilliant, but adapting them to modern capabilities is challenging." Sophia nodded, her hand unconsciously moving to her belly. "We don't have much time. Keep pushing." Suddenly, the burner phone in her pocket vibrated. She answered it quickly, moving to a quiet corner. "Elena? What's wrong?" Elena's voice came through, tense and hurried. "We've got a problem. Someone's been asking questions at the company. They know something's up." Sophia's heart raced. "Do you think they've discovered what we're doing?" "I don't know," Elena replied, frustration evident in her tone. "But we need to move faster. How's Project Phoenix coming along?" Before Sophia could answer, a commotion erupted near the main workstation. She rushed over, phone still in hand. "What's happening?" she demanded. Dr. Reyes looked up, her face a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "We did it. The simulation. It works. Project Phoenix is viable." A cheer went up from the assembled team. Sophia felt a surge of hope, quickly tempered by the reality of their situation. "Elena, did you hear that?" she said into the phone. "I did," Elena replied, her voice tight with emotion. But we're not out of the woods yet. Marcus is about to make the announcement. Turn on the next few hours would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of clean energy itself. She closed her eyes, sending a silent prayer for Marcus, hoping he was safe. When she opened them again, there was a new resolve in her gaze. They had come too far to give up now. "All right," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Let's finish this." The van sped on into the night, carrying with it the hopes of a better future and the determination of those willing to fight for it. The final battle was about to begin. Shall I continue with their next moves and the escalating conflict with Victoria and her allies? Look at this. Dr. Reyes pointed to a trending hashtag. Hashtag Phoenix Rising is exploding. People are demanding answers. Elena nodded, her face a mask of concentration. Good. The more public interest, the harder it'll be for Victoria to bury this. Suddenly, Sophia gasped, her eyes fixed on one of the screens. "Elena, look." They all turned to see Marcus's face filling the screen, looking haggard but determined. He was standing in front of Chun Technologies headquarters, surrounded by a sea of reporters. "My fellow citizens," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Today, I stand before you not just as the CEO of Chun Technologies, but as a man who has seen the truth and the lies behind the energy industry." Sophia felt her heart racing, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. This was it, the moment of truth. Marcus continued, his words gaining strength. "For too long, powerful interests have suppressed innovation in clean energy. Today, I'm here to expose those lies and to fight for a future we can all believe in." The room held its breath as Marcus began to detail the conspiracy against Chun Technologies, naming names and revealing evidence. Sophia watched in awe as the man she thought she knew transformed before her eyes into a crusader for truth. Suddenly, Elena's phone rang. She answered it, her face paling as she listened. "Understood. We're on our way." "What is it?" Sophia asked, dread creeping into her voice. Elena's eyes were hard as she replied, "Victoria's making her move. She's called an emergency board meeting to vote Marcus out and seize control of the company." The room erupted into panic chatter, but Sophia's voice cut through the noise. "We have to stop her. Now." Elena nodded, already moving towards the door. "I have a plan, but it's risky." "Sophia, are you sure you're up for this?" Sophia stood, her hand protectively over her belly, but her eyes blazing with determination. "These babies are as much a part of this fight as any of us." "I'm ready." As they rushed to the waiting car, Sophia felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was it, the final confrontation. Everything they had worked for, everything they had sacrificed came down to this moment. The New York traffic seemed to part before them as their driver weaved through the streets with expert precision. Sophia's mind raced, thinking of Marcus facing the board alone, of the babies growing inside her, of the future hanging in the balance. As they pulled up to the towering Chun Technologies building, Sophia saw a crowd gathering, protesters, supporters, and media all clamoring for a glimpse of the drama unfolding inside. Elena turned to her, her face etched with concern and resolve. "Are you ready for this? Once we go in, there's no turning back." Sophia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She thought of the journey that had brought her here, from a simple model to the center of a world-changing conspiracy. She thought of Marcus, of Elena, of the unexpected bonds forged in the crucible of crisis. "I'm ready," she said, her voice unwavering. "Let's save the world." As they stepped out of the car, flashbulbs exploded around them. The crowd's roar washed over them like a wave. Sophia felt Elena's hand grip hers tightly as they made their way through the throng. At the entrance, security guards moved to block their path. But before they could speak, a voice rang out above the din, "Let them through." Sophia's heart leapt as she saw Marcus pushing through the crowd, his face a mixture of relief and determination. As he reached them, he took Sophia's other hand, completing their unlikely trio. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away. It was just the three of them, Marcus, Elena, and Sophia, united against the storm. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the doors of Chun Technologies opened before them, Sophia felt a surge of courage. They were walking into the lion's den, but they carried with them the hopes of millions, the future of clean energy, and the strength of their unconventional bond. The final battle was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Would they emerge victorious? Or would Victoria's machinations spell the end of their dreams? The answer lay just beyond those doors, and Sophia was ready to fight for it with everything she had. "This meeting is closed," Victoria snapped, regaining her poise. "You have no right to be here." Marcus stepped forward, his voice resonating with authority. "Actually, Victoria, as CEO of this company, I have every right. And it's time we settled this once and for all." The tension in the room was palpable as board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sophia could feel their eyes on her, curiosity and judgment mingling in their gazes. "What you're proposing is madness," Victoria hissed, her carefully manicured nails digging into the polished wood of the table. "Project Phoenix will bankrupt us. The fossil fuel industry is dying," Elena interjected, her voice sharp. "And you know it. That's why you fought so hard against our innovation." Sophia stepped forward, her hand protectively over her belly. "You're not just fighting against a company or a project. You're fighting against the future, our children's future." A murmur ran through the room. One of the older board members, Mr. Jameson, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should hear them out." Victoria's eyes flashed dangerously. "Need I remind you all of the consequences if we pursue this path? The contracts will lose, the allies will alienate." "You mean your allies, Victoria?" Marcus countered, pulling out a stack of documents. "We have proof of your collusion with oil companies, your efforts to sabotage our clean energy initiatives." The room fell silent as Marcus began to lay out the evidence: emails, financial records, even recorded conversations. With each revelation, the color drained further from Victoria's face. Sophia watched the board members' reactions, hope blooming in her chest as she saw dawning realization and shock replace skepticism. Suddenly, Victoria made a lunge for the documents, but Elena was faster. She intercepted Victoria, their eyes locking in a fierce battle of wills. "It's over, Victoria," Elena said, her voice low but firm. "You've lost." In that moment, Sophia felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "the babies." The room erupted into chaos. Marcus rushed to Sophia's side, his face pale with concern. Board members stood, some calling for an ambulance, others demanding explanations. Through the commotion, Sophia locked eyes with Victoria. In that moment, she saw something unexpected in the other woman's gaze, not just defeat, but a flicker of remorse. "Wait," Victoria said, her voice cutting through the noise. Everyone froze, turning to look at her. "She needs medical attention. My private helicopter is on the roof. It's faster than an ambulance in this traffic." For a heartbeat, no one moved, stunned by this sudden turn. Then Marcus nodded, scooping Sophia into his arms. "Thank you," he said to Victoria, his voice gruff with emotion. As they rushed toward the elevator, Elena close behind, Sophia heard Mr. Jameson's voice ring out. "I move to fully back Project Phoenix and launch an internal investigation into the allegations against Ms. Hawthorne." A chorus of "I" followed them as the elevator doors closed. In the confined space, Sophia looked up at Marcus, then at Elena. Despite the pain, she felt a surge of triumph. "We did it," she whispered. Marcus kissed her forehead, his eyes shining with tears. "You did it, love. You both did." Elena took Sophia's hand, squeezing it gently. "Now let's go bring those babies into the world they helped save." As the elevator raced toward the roof, Sophia felt another contraction hit. But along with the pain came a profound sense of purpose. These children, born of such complicated circumstances, would enter a world on the brink of transformation, a transformation they had helped set in motion. The helicopter blades were already whirring as they emerged onto the rooftop. The New York skyline stretched before them, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. As Marcus carefully helped Sophia into the aircraft, she felt a sense of coming full circle. Their journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But as the helicopter lifted off, carrying them toward the hospital and the future, Sophia knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The sun broke through the clouds, bathing the city in golden light. It felt like a sign, a promise of the brighter future they had fought so hard to secure. "Any news?" Marcus asked for what felt like the 100th time. Elena looked up, her eyes soft with understanding. "Not yet. These things take time, Marcus." Just then, the doors to the delivery room burst open. A nurse emerged, her face beaming. "Mr. Chan, would you like to meet your children?" Marcus froze, overwhelmed by the moment. Elena gently pushed him forward, whispering, "Go. They need you." With shaking legs, Marcus entered the room. The sight that greeted him took his breath away. Sophia lay on the bed, exhausted but radiant, cradling not one, not two, but 3 tiny bundles. "Marcus," she said, her voice hoarse but filled with joy, "meet your daughters." He approached the bed, tears streaming down his face. As he gazed at the 3 perfect little faces, each unique yet undeniably connected, the magnitude of the moment hit him. "They're beautiful," he whispered, gently touching each tiny hand. "Just like their mother." Sophia smiled up at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of love and uncertainty. "What happens now, Marcus? With us, with them, with everything?" Before he could answer, Elena appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of professionalism barely concealing her emotion. "I hate to interrupt, but there's something you need to see." She held up her tablet, showing a live news feed. The headline blazed across the screen. Chun Technologies stock soars as Project Phoenix gains global support. Marcus and Sophia watched in amazement as the reporter detailed the worldwide reaction to their clean energy initiative. Governments were pledging support, investors were clamoring to get on board, and environmental groups were hailing it as a turning point in the fight against climate change. "We did it," Sophia breathed, looking down at her daughters. "We really did it." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, carefully taking one of the babies into his arms. "No, you did it. All of you." He looked from Sophia to Elena, then back to the infants. "You gave me a reason to fight, to be better, to build a world worthy of these little ones." Elena stepped closer, her professional demeanor softening as she gazed at the newborns. "They're going to change the world," she said softly. Sophia reached out, taking Elena's hand. "We all are. Together." The moment was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. They looked up to see Victoria Hawthorne standing there, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. I wanted to apologize, and to see the babies who managed to turn the entire energy industry on its head before they were even born." The room fell silent, the weight of their shared history hanging in the air. Then, surprisingly, it was Elena who spoke. "Come in, Victoria," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "Meet the future you tried so hard to prevent." As Victoria approached the bed, her eyes widened at the sight of the triplets. For a moment, all the corporate maneuvering, all the hostility melted away. They were just 5 people in a room, marveling at the miracle of new life. "They're extraordinary," Victoria whispered, a hint of regret in her voice. "I was wrong. About everything." Marcus stood, still cradling his daughter. "It's not too late to be on the right side of history, Victoria. Project Phoenix has room for allies, even former adversaries." Victoria looked at him, then at Sophia and Elena, surprise and gratitude washing over her face. I'd like that. Very much." As the sun began to set outside the hospital window, casting a warm glow over the room, Sophia felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, raising triplets, revolutionizing the energy industry, navigating the complex relationships they'd forged through crisis. But looking around at the unlikely group gathered in that hospital room, Marcus, Elena, even Victoria, she knew that they were up to the task. They had fought against impossible odds and emerged victorious. They had changed the course of history. And now, gazing down at her daughters, Sophia realized that this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning of a new family, a new era, a new world full of possibilities. "Welcome to the world, little ones," she whispered to her babies. "You've got quite the adventure ahead of you." As if in response, one of the infants opened her eyes, gazing up at her mother with a look of infinite wisdom and potential. In that moment, Sophia knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, love would light their way. The future, bright with promise, stretched out before them, a future they had fought for, a future they would build together. Sophia stood on the terrace, watching her daughters play with their friends. Lily, the eldest by 2 minutes, was organizing a game with the authority of a tiny CEO. Emma, the middle child, was busy showing off her latest science experiment to a group of awestruck kids. And Zoe, the youngest, was quietly reading a book under a tree, occasionally glancing up to observe the others with wise eyes. "They're so different," a familiar voice said beside her. Sophia turned to see Elena, elegant as ever in a tailored suit. Sophia smiled, her heart swelling with pride and love. "Just like their parents, I suppose," Elena chuckled, sipping her champagne. "Speaking of which, where is that husband of yours?" As if on cue, Marcus appeared, looking slightly harried but happy. "Sorry I'm late. The Beijing conference call ran over." Sophia kissed him on the cheek. "Everything okay?" Marcus nodded, his eyes shining with excitement. "Better than okay. The Chinese government just agreed to implement Project Phoenix on a national scale. We're looking at a 40% reduction in carbon emissions within the next decade." Elena raised her glass in a toast. "To changing the world, one country at a time." As they clinked glasses, a commotion near the gate caught their attention. Victoria Hawthorne was making her way through the crowd, looking somewhat out of place but determined. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said as she approached, echoing her words from that day in the hospital 5 years ago. Sophia smiled warmly. "Not at all. The girls will be thrilled to see their Aunt Victoria." As if summoned, the triplets came running up. "Aunt Vicky," they chorused, enveloping her in a group hug. Victoria's face softened, the years of corporate hardness melting away. "Hello, my little phoenixes. I've brought you each something special." As she handed out the gifts, a junior executive kit for Lily, a microscope for Emma, and a rare book on philosophy for Zoe, Sophia marveled at how much had changed. Victoria, once their fiercest opponent, was now an integral part of their lives and a key ally in the global implementation of Project Phoenix. The party continued around them, a microcosm of the world they were building, diverse, harmonious, full of potential. But as Sophia looked at her family, both blood and chosen, she felt a familiar stirring of restlessness. "Marcus," she said softly, "I've been thinking." He turned to her, recognizing the tone in her voice. "Oh, last time you had that look, we ended up revolutionizing the energy industry." Sophia laughed, but her eyes were serious. "Project Phoenix has done amazing things for energy. But there's so much more we could do. Education, healthcare, social equity." Elena overheard and joined the conversation. "Are you proposing we expand our scope?" Sophia nodded, her excitement building. "Why stop at clean energy? We have the resources, the influence. We could tackle some of the world's biggest problems." Victoria, who had been listening, stepped forward. "It's ambitious," she said, a hint of her old skepticism in her voice. "But if anyone could pull it off, it's this family." Marcus looked at Sophia, then at their daughters playing nearby. He thought of the world they were inheriting, cleaner and more promising than it had been 5 years ago, but still facing enormous challenges. "You're right," he said finally, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Why stop now? We've got 3 brilliant minds right here who'll be ready to take on the world before we know it." As if sensing they were being talked about, the triplets ran over. Lily, ever the leader, spoke up. "What are you all talking about?" Sophia knelt down, looking into her daughters' eager faces. "We're talking about the future, sweethearts. Your future. And how we're going to make it even better." Emma's eyes lit up. "Like, with more science, Zoe, quiet but perceptive, added, and more books. Marcus laughed, scooping up Zoe. Yes, and so much more. How would you girls like to help us change the world? The triplets exchanged excited glances, their young minds already whirring with possibilities. As the sun began to set on the party, casting a golden glow over the gathered friends and family, Sophia felt a surge of hope and determination. They had overcome so much, achieved the impossible. And yet, standing here with her extraordinary family, she knew that their greatest adventures were still to come. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and opportunities. But together, as a family, as a team, they were ready to face whatever came next. The phoenix had risen, and now it was time to soar even higher. Sophia, wrapped in a soft blanket and leaning against Marcus, couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion as she looked at the faces illuminated by the firelight. Each person here had played a crucial role in the journey that had led them to this moment. Suddenly, Lily spoke up, her voice filled with curiosity. "Mom, Dad, can you tell us the story again? About how you met and how Project Phoenix started?" Emma and Zoe chimed in with enthusiastic agreement, and even Victoria leaned forward, a wry smile on her face. "Yes, do tell. I'm always curious to hear how this version differs from the corporate-approved narrative." Marcus chuckled, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "Well, it all started with a chance meeting at a charity gala, as Marcus and Sophia took turns recounting their tale, with occasional interjections from Elena and Victoria to fill in details or offer different perspectives. The triplets listened with rapt attention. The story of deception, betrayal, unexpected alliances, and ultimate triumph unfolded like an epic saga. When they reached the part about the dramatic boardroom showdown and Sophia going into labor, Zoe, ever the thoughtful one, asked, "Weren't you scared, Mom? Facing all those powerful people while we were about to be born?" Sophia smiled, her eyes misting with the memory. "I was terrified, sweetheart. But sometimes, the things that scare us the most are the very things that give us the strength to do incredible things." As the story concluded, a contemplative silence fell over the group. The fire crackled, sending sparks dancing into the night sky. Suddenly, Emma sat up straight, her eyes wide with excitement. "I have an idea," she exclaimed. "What if we made Project Phoenix even bigger? Like, not just energy, but a whole city that's completely clean and sustainable." Lily, never one to be outdone, jumped in. "Ooh, and we could use AI to make everything super efficient." Zoe, quiet until now, added softly, "And we could make sure everyone in the city has access to good education and healthcare." The adults exchanged surprised and impressed glances. Victoria leaned forward, her business acumen kicking in despite herself. "That's actually not a bad idea. A proof of concept on a citywide scale could revolutionize urban planning worldwide." Elena nodded, already pulling out her tablet to start taking notes. "We could integrate all of our technologies, clean energy, smart infrastructure, advanced education systems." Marcus and Sophia shared a look of pride and slight amusement. "Well," Marcus said, "I guess we know what our next project is going to be." As the group began to excitedly discuss the possibilities, Sophia felt a tugging on her sleeve. She looked down to see Zoe, her eyes serious beyond her years. "Mom," Zoe whispered, "do you think we can really do it? Make the whole world better?" Sophia pulled her daughter close, looking out at the night sky. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if offering their own encouragement. "I don't know if we can change the whole world, sweetheart," Sophia said softly. "But I do know this: every big change starts with a small step. And with this family, with all of us working together, I believe we can take some pretty amazing steps." As if in response to her words, a shooting star streaked across the sky. The group fell silent, watching its blazing path. "Make a wish," Marcus whispered. But as Sophia looked around at her family, her brilliant daughters, her loving husband, and the unexpected allies who had become so much more, she realized she didn't need to make a wish. Everything she could have ever wanted was right here. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and possibilities. But together, they were ready to face whatever came next. The phoenix had risen, and now, with the next generation ready to spread their wings, it was time to see just how high they could soar. As the fire died down and the night deepened, the seeds of their next great adventure had been planted. The world was changing, and the Chun family was at the forefront, ready to lead the way into a brighter, cleaner, more equitable future. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. Lily, now a poised young woman of 15, stepped forward, her tablet in hand. The eastern sector is ahead of schedule, she reported, swiping through holographic projections. The vertical farms are already producing at 60% capacity. Emma, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, chimed in. And the atmospheric scrubbers are exceeding expectations. Air quality within the dome is 95% better than outside. Zoe, quiet as ever but with a fire in her eyes, added, the first wave of residents has already begun the acclimation process. Their feedback on the education and healthcare systems is overwhelmingly positive. Marcus beamed with pride, placing a hand on each of his daughter's shoulders. You've all done an incredible job. This city, it's beyond anything we could have imagined. Sophia, her face etched with lines of determination and joy, gazed out at the sprawling project. It's not just a city, she said softly. It's hope made tangible. Elena approached, looking as sharp as ever despite the heat. The global press is clamoring for a tour. Are we ready to show the world what we've built? Before anyone could answer, a sleek hovercar touched down nearby. Victoria stepped out, her face grave. We have a problem, she announced without preamble. The mood shifted instantly, tension crackling in the air. What kind of problem? Marcus asked, his voice tight. Victoria's eyes darted to the triplets before settling on the adults. Maybe we should discuss this privately, she began, but Zoe cut her off. We're not children anymore, Aunt Victoria, she said firmly. Whatever it is, we can handle it. Victoria sighed, then nodded. Very well. We've detected a security breach. Someone's been accessing our most sensitive data. Blueprints, resident information, everything. A collective gasp went up from the group. Emma's fingers flew across her tablet. How is that possible? Our encryption is state-of-the-art. It's not just a hacker, Victoria continued, her voice low. We think it's an inside job. Someone high up in the project. The implications hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just a security breach. It was a betrayal. Marcus's face hardened. Do we have any leads? Victoria nodded grimly. A few, but none of them are good. We're looking at board members, project leads, even... She hesitated, glancing at Elena. Elena's eyes widened. You can't be serious. After everything we've been through... Sophia stepped between them, her voice calm but firm. Let's not jump to conclusions. We've faced worse than this and come out stronger. We'll get to the bottom of it. Lily, ever the strategist, was already formulating a plan. We need to compartmentalize information, run a trace on all data access points, and... She was cut off by a low rumble. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Earthquake? Emma asked, her voice shaking. Zoe shook her head, pointing to the horizon. Look, in the distance, a massive dust cloud was rising, obscuring the view of the half-built city. Alarms began to blare across the construction site. The dome, Marcus shouted. It's collapsing. As chaos erupted around them, Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. This was no accident. Someone was trying to destroy everything they had built. In that moment, as the fruit of a decade's labor seemed to crumble before their eyes, Sophia realized that their greatest challenge was yet to come. The future they had fought so hard to create was under threat, and the enemy was closer than they had ever imagined. She looked at her family, Marcus, the triplets, Elena, even Victoria, and saw the same determination mirrored in their eyes. They had overcome the impossible before. They would do it again. As the dust cloud drew nearer, Sophia squared her shoulders. All right, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. Let's save our city. The Chun family moved as one, rushing towards the crisis, ready to face whatever came next. The phoenix had risen from the ashes once before. Now it was time to rise again. Lily's fingers flew across multiple screens, her face a mask of concentration. "I've managed to stabilize the Eastern Quadrant support systems," she announced, her voice tight. "But the main dome is still losing integrity." Emma, surrounded by a team of engineers, looked up from a complex schematic. "The atmospheric scrubbers are offline. If we don't get them back up soon, the air quality will become toxic." Zoe, usually the quietest of the triplets, was coordinating evacuation efforts, her calm voice a stark contrast to the chaos around her. "We've got 80% of the residents in safe zones, but there are still pockets trapped in the collapsing sectors." Marcus paced the room, barking orders into his comm unit. "I want every available drone redirected to search and rescue. We are not losing a single life today." Sophia stood at the center of it all, her eyes darting between screens, her mind racing. Something wasn't adding up. The sabotage was too precise, too calculated. Whoever was behind this knew exactly where to hit them to cause maximum damage. "Elena," she called out, "pull up the personnel files of everyone with top-level clearance. Cross-reference with access logs for the past month." Elena nodded, her fingers already moving across her tablet. On it, Victoria burst into the room, her usually impeccable appearance disheveled. The media's caught wind of the situation. "We've got news drones trying to breach the perimeter," Marcus swore under his breath. "The last thing we need is a media circus. Can you handle it?" Victoria nodded grimly. "I'll do my best to spin this, but we need good news and fast." As if in response to her words, a triumphant shout came from Emma's station. "We've got the scrubbers back online. Air quality is stabilizing." A collective sigh of relief went through the room, but Sophia knew they weren't out of the woods yet. The dome was still compromised, and the threat of further sabotage loomed large. Suddenly, Zoe's voice cut through the noise. "Mom! Dad, you need to see this." All eyes turned to the central holographic display. Zoe had pulled up security footage from various points around the city. As they watched, a figure in a maintenance uniform moved through restricted areas with ease, planting small devices at critical junctures. "That's how they did it," Lily breathed. "Those devices must be what's causing the structural failure." Marcus leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "Can you enhance the image? Get us a clear shot of their face." Zoe's fingers danced across the controls, zooming and enhancing. As the image cleared, a collective gasp went up from the room. "It can't be," Elena whispered, her face pale. The face staring back at them was one they all knew well. Dr. James Reyes, their head of research and development, a man who had been with the project from the beginning. Sophia felt her heart drop. "James, why?" As if in answer to her question, every screen in the command center suddenly went dark. When they flickered back to life, Dr. Reyes's face filled them all. "I'm sorry it's come to this." His voice echoed through the room. "But Phoenix City is an abomination. You think you're saving the world, but you're just creating a new elite, a chosen few who get to live in paradise while the rest of humanity suffers." Marcus stepped forward, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. "James, this is madness. We're trying to create a model for sustainable living that can be replicated worldwide. You know this." Dr. Reyes shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "It's a beautiful dream, Marcus, but it's just that, a dream. The world doesn't change that easily. Sometimes you have to burn it all down to start anew." As he spoke, new alarms began to blare. Emma's voice was filled with panic as she reported. "Multiple new breaches detected. The entire dome structure is failing." Sophia felt time slow down as she looked around the room. Her family, her team, all the hopes and dreams they'd poured into Phoenix City, everything hung in the balance. In that moment, staring into the face of betrayal and impending disaster, Sophia made a decision. Her voice cut through the chaos, steady and determined. "James," she said, looking directly into the camera, "you're right about one thing. The world doesn't change easily, but that's exactly why we can't give up. Meet me at the central hub. Just you and me. Let's talk about this. The room erupted in protests, but Sophia held up her hand, silencing them. Dr. Reyes's face showed surprise, then consideration. You have 10 minutes, he said finally. After that, it all comes down. As the screens went dark, Sophia turned to face her family. Their faces showed a mix of fear, determination, and love. Mom, Lily started, but Sophia cut her off with a gentle smile. Trust me, she said softly. I have a plan. As Sophia walked out of the command center, the weight of Phoenix City's future on her shoulders, she knew that the next 10 minutes would determine everything. It was time to face the man who threatened to destroy their dream and somehow find a way to save it all. The clock was ticking, and the fate of Phoenix City, and perhaps the world, hung in the balance. Sophia's heart raced, but her steps were steady. She had faced impossible odds before, and she would do so again. As she drew closer, she could see the conflict etched on James's face. The man she had once considered a friend and ally. James, she called out, her voice carrying across the empty plaza. I'm here. Let's talk. He turned to face her, his eyes wild with a mixture of determination and regret. Sophia, I didn't think you'd actually come alone. She stopped a few feet away from him, close enough to see the trembling of his hands as he held a small device, undoubtedly the trigger for the remaining explosives. I had to, she said softly. There's too much at stake to do otherwise. James's laugh was bitter. Too much at stake? That's rich, coming from you. Do you have any idea what you've done? What you're doing to the world with this monstrosity? Sophia took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm. Tell me, James. Help me understand why you're doing this. His words came out in a rush, as if he had been holding them back for years. This city, it's a fantasy, a playground for the rich and privileged while the rest of the world burns. You're creating a new class of elites, Sophia. How is that fair? How is that progress? Sophia nodded, acknowledging his words. You're right, James. It's not fair, but it's a start. He blinked, caught off guard by her agreement. Sophia pressed on, taking a careful step closer. Phoenix City isn't meant to be an escape for the elite. It's a prototype, a living laboratory. Everything we learn here, every breakthrough we make, it's all designed to be shared, to be replicated around the world. James shook his head, but Sophia could see doubt creeping into his eyes. That's not how the world works, Sophia. The rich will keep it for themselves, just like they always do. Sophia's voice grew passionate, her eyes blazing with the conviction that had driven her for all these years. Then we change how the world works, James. That's what we've always been trying to do. Not just with clean energy or sustainable living, but with a new model of society. Open source technology, universal education, equitable healthcare. These aren't just features of Phoenix City. They're our blueprint for global change. She took another step closer, her voice softening. But we can't do that if you destroy everything we've built. Please, James, help us finish what we started. Help us make it right. For a long moment, James stood frozen, the device trembling in his hand. Sophia could almost see the war raging behind his eyes, the idealist who had joined their project years ago battling with the disillusioned man he had become. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the air. They both looked up to see a massive fissure spreading across the dome. Time was running out. James, Sophia pleaded, reaching out her hand. It's not too late. We can fix this together. But you have to make a choice now. The world seemed to hold its breath as James looked from Sophia's outstretched hand to the device in his own. In his eyes, Sophia could see every doubt, every fear, every hope that had led them both to this moment. With a choked sob, James dropped the device and fell to his knees. Sophia rushed forward, enveloping him in an embrace as he broke down. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. I'm so sorry. Sophia held him tightly, relief washing over her. It's okay, James. It's okay. But we're not done yet. We need your help to save the city. As if on cue, her comm unit crackled to life. Marcus's voice came through, tight with urgency. Sophia, the dome's integrity is at critical levels. We need to act now. Sophia helped James to his feet, looking him in the eye. Are you with us? He nodded, wiping away tears and squaring his shoulders. Yes, tell me what to do. As they raced back towards the command center, Sophia's mind whirled with possibilities. They had overcome the immediate threat, but the real work was just beginning. Saving Phoenix City was only the first step. Now they had to prove to the world, and to themselves, that their dream of a better future was more than just a fantasy. The dome groaned ominously above them, a reminder of how fragile their vision was. But as Sophia looked at James, saw the renewed purpose in his eyes, she felt a surge of hope. They had faced betrayal and came out stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The future of Phoenix City, and perhaps the world, was still unwritten. But with every step, every decision, they were writing it.